Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a twist spiral ice dye design. To start, I have my shirt inside out and I have it laying flat. I'm going to grab one corner of this shirt right at the hem and I'm going to begin to twist it. I'm going to lift it up off the table and just start to twist the shirt. Once I have the entire shirt twisted, I'm going to start to spiral it in on itself. So I'm going to start on the corner of the hem where I began my twist and just spiral the shirt in, kind of like a cinnamon roll. And as I'm spiraling the shirt, I'm going to go ahead and keep it twisted, maybe add a few more twists in the shirt. Then to hold this whole thing together, I'm going to use some rubber bands. I thought it would be fun to try some fall or autumn colors on this shirt, so I've chosen various shades of brown, kind of red, and yellow. For my setup, I have a plastic tote, and on top of the tote, I have a little metal shelf. On top of the shelf, I have a plastic container. It is actually a bowl, which I drilled holes in the bottom. So it's a little flatter on the bottom than it would be if I used a colander. I tried several of my colanders and it would have had to have made the shirt kind of go down in the center for me to use the colander. This because the bowl has a flat bottom, but it has holes in the bottom, so it's not actually going to hold the muck, which is the runoff from the melting ice that's mixed with the dye. That will let all of that part drain out. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's a colander without actually being a colander. So what I envisioned for this shirt is I envisioned lines of brown dye, and then in between the lines of brown dye, I would alternate putting a red and a yellow. So I'm starting right off the bat with Brazil nut from Dharma Trading Company, and I'm putting one line of that going all the way across the shirt. From here on out, each half of the shirt that was divided with the Brazil nut is going to have 3 different browns in it. So for the first half, I'm going to use khaki from Pro Chemical and Dye, bronze from Dharma, and mocha from Pro Chemical and Dye. Then on the other half, I'm using chino and harvest wheat, which are Pro Chemical and Dye colors, and wet sands from Dharma. Wet sands is a special order Dharma color, and you can still purchase that, but you would have to purchase large quantities from Dharma. Otherwise, on Facebook, there's a group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace, and you can usually purchase these special order colors in there in smaller quantities. People buy the larger quantities of them and then break them down and sell them in smaller quantities. I have a link to that group down below this video in the description. By the way, when I'm adding the dye, I'm kind of trying to add quite a bit of dye on each one of the lines. I don't want to have to come back and add more dye later. Anytime I do a more complex design like this, by complex I mean it has a lot of colors, not necessarily that the design is super intricate, but that I have a lot of colors and getting the placement exactly the same on them would be difficult. I normally try to add just quite a bit of dye the first time and then continue adding layers of ice to force any of that undissolved dye down through the shirt. Okay, now that I have all of the browns on the shirt, in between the sections, I'm going to go and place a line of color. So the colors that I'm using are Brick from Pro Chemical and Dye, Palomino Gold from Dharma, Oxblood Red from Dharma, Amber Waves from Dharma, Barn Red from Pro Chemical, Curry from Pro Chemical, Terracotta from Dharma, and Butterscotch from Pro Chemical and Dye. And if you notice, I'm leaving a little bit of white in between the lines of color and the lines of brown. I want to allow these dyes to spread out just a little bit. Okay, so now that I have all the dye on the shirt, over the top I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash. Then I'm going to add on a layer of ice, and I'm going to fill this bowl all the way up with ice. This is a pretty deep bowl. I know it's kind of hard to gauge the distance from this camera angle, but it's a pretty tall bowl, and so I'm going to put quite a bit of ice on top, and then I'm just going to leave the shirt alone and allow the ice to melt. I left this container inside, so it kind of had a slow melt, and it took a few hours for the ice to melt on top of this shirt. After the ice had melted, I came back and checked, and I did have quite a bit of undissolved dye left on top. And I gently picked the shirt up and looked on the bottom portion of the shirt. I had one light area on the bottom of the shirt, so I went ahead and added a little bit more ice to the top. I didn't add it all the way to the top of the bowl again, but I did add enough that I was hoping it would fill in that lighter area. Then, after the ice melted the second time, I took this bowl and put it inside of a plastic tote, put the lid on the tote, and I placed it outside where it could process in the heat. I left it for about 24 to 48 hours before I began rinsing it. And by the time the second layer melted, it looked like that spot on the back side of the shirt had filled in nicely. So when I turn the shirt over, you can see it looks to be fairly well saturated. To rinse the shirt, I began rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I untied the shirt and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I went ahead and soaked the shirt by running some really hot water in my utility sink, placing a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap in the water, then just allowing the shirt to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine, and I washed the shirt using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks like a fun shirt. I've done several of these before, but it's been a while. I did one not too long ago, but I used a very mild color and it just didn't turn out exactly the way I was expecting. But I like this autumn color combination. I like the browns paired with the yellows and the reds. I also think I have a lot of really cool color splits. You know, the reds have pretty color splits that I used, and then the browns, I have a lot of olive green that's come out of those colors and just a variety of shades. I think it turned out looking pretty cool. Down in the portion of the shirt where I started my twist and I started my spiral, the colors are more muddled down in that area because that was in the center of the design. So because of the slope of the shirt, most of the colors just kind of ran down in that area. So it's a little muddier in that area. And by muddier, I just mean it's just the colors aren't as defined, I guess is a better word, down in that area of the shirt. But I don't think it looks bad. I think it ended up looking really pretty. So overall, I really like this shirt. I think it ended up looking really cool. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.